Ben can go into the more details about the actual deposition. But the fact that we've got a 3-year-old child that obviously died and was cremated and was buried, this is something that is just giving us some insight into the behavior of these folks.
To find a discovery of this nature, was certainly nothing that we expected.
This is the very first house. This is the very first burial. This is the very first residential behavioral suite. So there's no comparison.
This was not the primary focus of our work at the site. The primary focus at the beginning and how we got the funding was to focus on a very early component. So one of the earliest in Alaska, over 13,000 years old. So the very last day, we uncovered the top of this. So it looked like a hearth. It looked like a pit hearth, and that's what we're interpreting the function to have been.
Well, the child was laid down in the pit. The child was, a 3-year-old would be about like 3 feet high, something of that nature. The pit was considerably smaller. So just based on that, the child was laying toward the edge of the pit, and the knees would have had to been drawn up. So they would kind of be like a flexed burial, but the child would have been laying on his or her back, because you can tell by the coloration. So the back of the cranium was dark in color, black, which means it didn't get to as hot of a temperature as the rest. So it was either because it was laying directly on the ground surface, or it was because it was just the coolest part of the fire. And then as you move up, you can actually see the change in color on the skull. So you've got black in the back, and then brownish to grayish, and then in the front to white, and then the face is completely gone. So in other words, the hottest part of the fire was up higher. So they probably put the child on the ground, then built the fire over the top of the individual, is what I'm thinking.
We can't compare this to anything because nobody's ever found anything like this in this part of the world at this time frame. So, obviously we know we're dealing with something very old at the beginning. I mean, we had a lot of good information about the age at the very beginning. So that certainly made it, the magnitude of the discovery was apparent to us at the initial discovery. One of my coworkers, Josh Ruther, who's doing the geoarchaeology at the site, and myself, we both have children that are roughly, the same age of the find. And so that was kind of eerie to think about, it brought it home more specifically that it's not just a human remain that we're dealing with. We're dealing with a child, somebody's child.
But we have actually thought of a name, and it's Haksa Shag Zanin, and that means this child of the river where the sun rises. It's just the position of the child and the feature where it was, and then that's based a little bit on what we know that land was referred to by people that lived there before in the Salcha area.
We honor the dead that are long ago dead, in that we don't know them, but we may share brotherhood with them. So just like a while ago I mentioned, I have to make prayers. It is to God, our Creator, that I didn't desecrate, the remains, just that, because of the necessity of study and science and research, that it became a must for us to do what we had to do, and I have to seek forgiveness for that.